What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Finally rolled over 550 miles on the Aprilia RSV4, so it's about time for that first service. We know Aprilia, like most manufacturers, calls for first service at 1,000 kilometers or 621 miles, so it's about that time. I bought the Aprilia maintenance manual from AF1 Racing. It's the downloadable electronic one. And we'll go ahead and take a look at the manual, see what Aprilia calls for as far as this first service goes. Of course, it's gonna be oil change, filter change, chain adjustment, as well as retorquing some things. One thing though, the maintenance light on these bikes, it comes on at 621 miles and there's no way to reset it unless you have PADS, P-A-D-S. That's Aprilia's diagnostic system. If you don't have that, you cannot reset that light. So that's pretty much the only thing that you cannot do at home. Kind of unfortunate. What I'm doing now is I'm going to jump on the RSV4. I'm going to get the oil completely warmed up. In the Aprilia manual, it says you should ride the bike for about 15 minutes or 10 miles. Just so you guys know, I'm sure most of you guys know this anyway, but I'll mention it. The temperature on the dash, that's just your coolant temperature. That's not indicative of what the oil temperature is. So just letting the bike idle and let the coolant get to 215 degrees or whatever the case may be, that is probably not going to be sufficient to get the oil hot. So you actually need to ride the bike to get that oil to the temperature it needs to be before you start draining it. All right, so got the bike on the stands, nice and hot now. I took it for about a 10-mile ride, just a little bit short of that. So we're gonna go ahead and drain the oil now. And oil drain plug, gonna be that one there, okay? That's a number 10 Allen. You can see there when the oil's nice and hot, it drains really easy. My drain plug, if I can get the camera to focus, looks about like that. So for those who are comparing on their bikes, that's the material that's on my drain plug. I got that oil drained. I'm noticing the oil filter, it's all the way up there, which you can get it without removing this fairing here, but I think for my purposes, it'd just be easier if I just remove it. You'll also notice in this video, the belly pan has already been removed. If you guys need help with removing that, go to my radiator guard install video. I'll put it in the description. And in that video, I have a very detailed how-to on how to remove those fairings as well as the belly pan. Let's take a closer look at this drain plug here. So this is what mine looked like. Out of all the bikes I had, this one seems about normal. So let's go ahead and wipe it and see what we got. Yeah, so of course there's some metal particles and things like that, totally normal. Obviously clutch material and things of that sort, but looks pretty standard. So if anybody else did this service, or when you do this service, if you've got, seems like you have more or less, let me know in the comments. But yeah, looks, I'll get this cleaned up real nice, but doesn't seem out of the ordinary or anything like that. Let's go ahead and get that oil filter off. As you can see, I have some aluminum foil protecting some of the parts that I think oil will splatter on. I'm probably gonna put another piece there on the manifold there as well. I just find it easier to just put aluminum foil. It's just how I do it, as opposed to letting it splatter on things and trying to clean it up later. I don't really like spraying brake clean on everything either. So again, this is just what I do. If you have a different method, that's fine. The oil filter, I was not able to loosen it with just my hand. I had to use an actual oil filter wrench. If you don't have an oil filter wrench, you can use a set of channel locks to loosen it. Obviously, you can't use those channel locks to tighten it, however. So let's go ahead and get this oil filter draining. Here's our new oil filter. This is just what AF1 Racing suggested. This is what they recommended. So this is what I went with, HF138. And if we go to our manual, we can see here, we're already draining. Remove the filler cap, make sure you guys do that. I think I forgot to mention that earlier, but kind of goes without saying. It's the same for any other internal combustion engine. You always remove that filler cap to relieve the pressure to help it drain easier. So we're here, and just want to mention this here. So in the manual, it mentions, okay, only fill the oil filter to 1/3 of the capacity before fitting. So let's make sure we do that. And of course, we're going to put a thin layer of oil also on the sealing ring. But again, That's standard for pretty much any internal combustion engine. So let's go ahead and get that oil filter on. I also ordered new crush washers for the oil drain plug. This is the part number here. In the manual, it doesn't say anything about having to replace it each time. It just says, where is it? It just says replace the drainage plug sealing washers if necessary. So in my case, I'm just gonna replace it, but just so you guys know, Aprilia doesn't specify to change it every single time. Got the new oil filter on, drain plug is back in with the new crush washer. The Aprilia calls for 22.13 foot-pounds on this drain plug. I did not find a torque spec for the oil filter, so I just did what I normally do, which is I make the oil filter as tight as I can with my hand only, so not using any tools, as tight as I can. Let's go ahead and get this thing filled up. Aprilia calls for 4 liters on the refill. It has a 4.1 liter capacity, but in the manual, Aprilia says when you refill it after an oil and filter change, 4 liters. And this is the oil that we're using. Again, this is just what was recommended by AF1 Racing. It's a Castrol Power 10W50 4T, full synthetic. Got the Aprilia topped off with 4 liters of that Castrol oil. Let's see what Aprilia wants us to do next. Looks like they want us to check the oil level by warming up the engine for a few minutes, switching it off, letting it sit for 30 seconds, and then checking the oil on the dipstick. So let's go ahead and do that. Let the Aprilia run for about 3 minutes here and let it rest for 30 seconds. So let's go ahead and check our dipstick here to see where we're at. In my case, putting 4 liters back into the bike was perfect. So again, let it idle for a couple minutes, shut it down, let it sit for 30 seconds, and then check your dipstick. It's gonna look like this, and you want the oil level to be between here, right? Preferably closer to the max, but obviously you don't wanna overfill it either. But again, in my case, 4 liters was perfect on the dipstick. Here's the Aprilia scheduled maintenance table. For this service, we're gonna be interested in this first column here. This is the 1,000 kilometer column. So motorcycle setup, if you see an I, what it means is check, clean, adjust, lubricate, or replace only if necessary. So we see there's a lot of I's here. So motorcycle setup, drive chain, we're going to be checking that. Clutch cable, that's going to just be simple lube, so pretty straightforward. Exhaust valve, we're not going to care about that for this service because we're changing that. Steering bearings and steering play, really simple. It's like checking the bearings on your car. Just make sure that there's no excessive play side to side, no weird noises or anything like that. Wheel bearings, same thing. So you'll need front and rear stands to check that. You're gonna wanna make sure that the wheels spin freely and there's no grinding noises or any other weird noises going on. Also check the play there as well. Diagnosis by tool, of course, we can't do that because we need that pad system that only the dealer has. Pad wear, again, we all should know how to do that. Engine oil filter, we've replaced that already. General vehicle operation, gonna inspect that. Brake systems, light circuit, so make sure all the lights are working. Safety switches, that's gonna be your like your side stand safety switch and things like that. That's all gonna need to be checked. Check your brake fluid level, coolant level. Engine oil, we've already replaced that. Tire pressure, we all know how to check for that. Nut bolt tightness is going to be one of the more important ones here. So I think what I'll do is, it's going to be pretty boring if you guys watch me just torque all the different bolts on the bike. So what I'll do is I'll put the torque specs in the description so you guys can just do that on your own. Clutch cover, flywheel, and some screw tightness, again, it's going to be torque specs. I'll put that in the description. Flexible coupling pin nuts, I don't know what that is, so if anybody has an idea, let me know. Other than that, that's about it. So we can see here the book time for this first service is 130 minutes. Got the front end all tightened up, all retorqued. The only bolt that was a little loose was this caliper bolt, moved a little bit. But anyways, when you check for your bearings, all you're gonna do is put the bike on the stand, check for any weird noises, any like gravelly kind of grinding noises, anything that sounds abnormal. You hear a little noise here, that's just from the brake pads, right? Anything beyond that's going to be abnormal. And also you check your play as well. So you're going to take the wheel, go side to side, make sure that there's no play there. Just so there's no confusion, these frame bolts, these are 36.88. That one, and then there's some on the other side as well. So the only reason why I pointed these out specifically is because it's a little bit, it could be a little bit confusing as far as putting the torque spec in the description, right? When I put the torque specs for the front caliper bolts, the axle nut, things like that, it's pretty easy to identify, but these would be a little bit more difficult. Now, as far as adjusting the chain, this is what Aprilia calls for. So they want 20 millimeters of play on that top portion of the chain with the bike on the ground and on its side stand. So mine checked out to be fine, didn't need any adjustment, but make sure you guys check that and make sure that you're at this spec here. Go guys, oil changed, chain adjusted, all the wheel bearings checked, tire pressure checked, all the fluids checked, everything important is torqued. Again, I'll put those torque specs in the description to help you guys out, but not too bad as far as the first service goes. So you can do it yourself. The only issue that you're going to have is you can't clear the maintenance light, but hopefully your dealer will do that for free or for a nominal charge. But anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Appreciate that very much. Next video coming up is going to be exhaust and tune for this bike, so we'll see you on the next one.